All right, let's just jump right in, shall we? We're talking about maybe the biggest, most captivating mystery in all of history, the lost civilization of Atlantis. This one sentence, this single, super dramatic line from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. That's it. That's the spark that lit the whole fire. Everything, and I mean everything we think we know about Atlantis, it all starts right here, with this one catastrophic event he described more than 2,000 years ago. And that's the question, right? For centuries, this has been the puzzle that has obsessed researchers, explorers, and even dreamers. Was Plato tapping into some kind of distorted ancient memory, a real piece of history? Or was this all just a big philosophical story he made up? So that's what we're going to do. We are going to open up the official case file on Atlantis. We're going to follow the breadcrumbs, look at the clues, and really dig into the top theories about where it could have been. It's time to sort the real evidence from all the noise. Okay, first things first, and this is absolutely critical. Every single detail we have about Atlantis, its location, its people, how it met its end, it all comes from one guy, Plato. He was writing way back in the 4th century BCE, and here's the kicker. There are no other sources from his time that back him up. None. It all rests on his shoulders. So this naturally leads us to our first major theory. What if Atlantis wasn't a real place at all? What if it was just a story, a symbol for something else? A lot of scholars, and I mean a lot, think it was an allegory. And this is where that whole allegory idea really starts to click. You have to remember the context. Plato was writing right after the huge Greco-Persian Wars. So think about it. He tells this story about a super rich, incredibly powerful empire that decides to go to war against Athens and gets defeated. Sound familiar? I mean, the parallel to the real-life Persian Empire is just staring you right in the face. But there's a big but here, a major wrench in the works for the allegory theory. See, in the actual text in Plato's dialogue, he specifically introduces the story of Atlantis as a true story, a real-world example of how his perfect, ideal state, Athens, would behave. So, if it's supposed to be a real example, why would he use a completely made-up story? It just doesn't quite fit, you know? All right, so if we entertain the idea that it wasn't just a story, that leads to the million-dollar question. Where was it? And that, my friends, is where our geographic manhunt or island hunt begins. Okay, so the most classic theory, the one you've probably heard of, just takes Plato at his word. He said Atlantis was in the Atlantic Ocean, out past the Pillars of Heracles, which, by the way, is what we call the Strait of Gibraltar today. So this theory imagines a massive continent-sized island that just sank right there in the middle of the Atlantic. Yeah, it's a cool idea, but modern science has pretty much blown it out of the water. I mean, our understanding of plate tectonics is solid. We know the continents, South America and Africa, fit together like puzzle pieces. There's just no room for a giant lost continent in between. And those islands, the Azores, the geology shows they were actually lower in the past, not the sinking peaks of some great landmass. So strike one for this theory. All right, let's bring in our next suspect. This one is a real-life civilization called Tartessos, over in what's now Spain. Now, this was a seriously wealthy trading hub, and what's interesting is the location kind of fits the bill. But when you look at the case file for Tartessos, it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, the location checks out, it's beyond the Pillars of Heracles, and interestingly, the Greek word Plato used for island, neossos, can also mean peninsula, which fits perfectly. But then you look at the don't match column, and, well, the whole thing starts to fall apart. The timeline is all wrong, it's not a Bronze Age civilization, and there's zero evidence they ever went to war with the Greeks. The key details just don't line up. Okay, now for a much newer theory, one that has absolutely exploded online in recent years. This one links Atlantis to this really bizarre geological formation in Africa called the Reshat structure. You might have seen it. It's often called the Eye of the Sahara. And you can immediately see why this theory went viral. Just look at it. Plato described the capital city of Atlantis as being made of these perfect concentric rings of land and water. And then you look at the Reshat structure. The resemblance is just, wow. It's uncanny. It's not hard to see why this grabbed everyone's imagination. But like a lot of things that look too good to be true, when you start digging into the actual science and history, the whole thing just crumbles. That salt in the middle? Yeah, it's not from a long-lost ocean. And the name Atlantis? That was a name for a people, not a place. And they lived hundreds and hundreds of miles away from this thing, over by the Atlas Mountains. So, unfortunately, it's a dead end. Okay, so our next lead takes us into the Mediterranean, to the island of Sardinia. We're looking at a Bronze Age culture here, the Nuragic civilization. Now, this theory has some things going for it. The time period? Bang on. They were a wealthy, powerful trading civilization. And as part of the mysterious Sea Peoples, they were a major military force back in the Bronze Age. But, and this is the deal breaker, the fatal flaw. Historical records show that the Sardinians, or the Shurden, actually fought alongside the Greeks, not against them. That's the complete opposite of Plato's story. So another compelling idea that just doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Which finally brings us to our last major theory. And for many, many scholars, this isn't just another theory. This is the one. This is our prime suspect, the incredible Minoan civilization. So here's the idea. Atlantis wasn't its real name. It was the name passed down through generations for the great Minoan civilization. They were the dominant power in the Bronze Age Mediterranean, based on the island of Crete. And their glory's capital city? Well, that was on a nearby volcanic island we now call Santorini, which back then was called Thera. And this is where it gets really, really compelling. Just look at the checklist. Plato's city had concentric rings, while before Santorini's volcano blew its top, it was a ringed island. Bull worship, the Minoans were famous for their bull leaping rituals. Buildings made of red, white, and black stone, yep, the Minoans used those exact colors. And a powerful empire that vanished after a cataclysmic disaster. The Minoan civilization collapsed right after the Santorini eruption, which was one of the biggest volcanic events in all of human history. The parallels are just staggering. And here is the absolute clincher. Remember that war against the Greeks? We have actual historical and archaeological evidence of a conflict between the Minoans and the mainland Greeks. This is the one piece of the puzzle that no other theory can really account for. With the Minoans, all the pieces, they just seem to snap into place in a way they just don't with any other suspect. So when you stack up all the evidence, the history, the geology, the culture, the Minoan connection is by far the most compelling theory we have. It's the best fit. But is the case for Atlantis officially closed? Not quite. Because the legend of Atlantis is so much more than just a historical mystery. Its real power comes from this incredible mix of things. It's part faded historical memory, for sure, but it's also part philosophical lesson from Plato and part just pure epic myth. And it's that blend that has kept us hooked for literally millennia, always looking, always wondering. And that really leaves us with one last big question, doesn't it? After 2,400 years, why are we still searching for Atlantis? What is it about this lost world that just refuses to let go of our imagination? You know, maybe the search for Atlantis isn't really about finding a sunken city. Maybe it's about searching for a part of ourselves, a powerful reminder of the incredible heights we can reach and just how fragile it all is, how quickly it can all be lost.